Welcome to the third edition of the Simpson Faculty Showcase Lecture Series. Today, we're excited to have with us Assistant Professor of Biology, Dr. Aswati Subramanian, as she presents biological design from cells to palaces. And at this time, I would like to turn it over to Aswati.
Thank you, Andy. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Alumni Office for giving me this opportunity to talk about this topic because it's near and dear to my heart. And also, I'd like to thank Simpson College for allowing me to convert this dream that I've had with respect to biodesign into a reality, starting my first year at Simpson College. For the rest of the talk, the way I want to proceed is talk a little bit about my journey, my inspiration in terms of combining biology with art. And then I'd like to shift the focus to what is being currently done. What are the contemporary ideas with respect to biological design? And the most important and the most exciting part of this talk for me is what my students and I have done at Simpson College and how we can build a robust program for retention, joy, excitement, even beyond just the classroom. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to share my screen with everyone. So I'd like to start my talk with this very famous and almost cliched photograph by Leonardo da Vinci. I almost said Leonardo DiCaprio because that's the person we're familiar with. But this is an artwork by Leonardo da Vinci, who was both a scientist and an artist. And his need for combining art and science is not just unique to him, because most of the artists and scientists during the Renaissance period were able to create this system that we now call a liberal arts education, but it's not really new, right? And so over time, there were a lot of scientists who were interested in art and a lot of artists who were interested in science. And I'd like to showcase a few of these interdisciplinary thinkers through history. My favorite is personally Anna Atkins, who was a British biologist, a botanist to be specific. And she was the first scientist to actually use photography. And so you can see these two blue paintings of hers that are actually images of nature, and she has been lauded for being the first scientist to use imaging as a way to communicate her science. On the other side, we also have artists such as Georges Seurat, as you can see to the left, who used pointillism, a very scientific and technical way of communicating his art. And then we have cell biologists or neuroscientists such as Ramon y Cajal, who used art to communicate his science of the visual system that he was studying. I think Samuel Morse is someone who is most familiar to most people here. Samuel Morse had an interesting history. He was an artist and he tried a lot to get into the art world, but somehow his life took him into the field of communication, which he excelled in. But throughout his time as a scientist, he tried to delve into art as well. And so regardless of whether we're talking about the Renaissance period or contemporary artists, art and science, even though seemingly unique, have this level of interaction that creates creativity and wonder. And I'm going to keep talking about the role of liberal arts education in terms of focusing more on this combination area of wonder, because that is where our strengths and future lie. And so I do want to talk a little bit about my journey as a scientist and someone who's also interested in art, to explain why biological design is near and dear to my heart. So ever since I was a kid, I was always leading two parallel lives. To the left, you see one of my paintings that is also in my office, where I've tried to explain my need for both science and art. They are seemingly different worlds, but for me, maintaining an equilibrium is when I'm able to combine those worlds. And that's why you see this line from this conical flask that connects to this palette. Um, However, in the past, I was not really able to find a way to combine these two aspects. Yes, as I was studying microscopy, I found ways to integrate color and graphics into some of my images that you see to the right. But it wasn't till a few years before I joined Simpson College as I was doing my postdoctoral research, where I actually did a few Google searches to find how I could combine art and science to lead a more meaningful and joyful future. So that begs the question, what is this visceral need to merge art and science? Is it just a whim? Is it just because it makes us happy? And what is the basis for this sort of a need? And as I was doing my Google searches, thank you, Google, for allowing me to use words such as just art, science, collaboration, and come up with this whole list of resources and information. What I found was it wasn't just the Renaissance artists. There's a huge group of scientists and artists and architects that are there right now, these beautiful people who have all been able to combine their love for science along with art. Some of them are artists that do a little bit of science, and some of them are scientists that do a little bit of art, but they all seem to have this need to combine both these fields. What I also found that was common amongst all these artists, scientists, architects, is that they were using biology as a source of inspiration, not just as ideas, but sometimes even physical products. So where does that need come from? Why are we drawn to this need towards integrating with nature and biology? This isn't really a new ideology. The term biophilia was coined by E.O. Wilson, who is a famous biologist and writer. He's 92 years old, I think, or 95 years old. And he suggested that biophilia was the urge of human beings to affiliate with other life forms, which is why we enjoy walks in nature, which is why we have pets around us, and which is why we're always drawn to green spaces. And so at the foundation, at the basis of our interests in both science and the aesthetics of art is biophilia, our need to integrate with science and nature. Somehow, though, along the way, as we started getting into the Industrial Revolution, into the modern area of art and architecture, we sort of lost our bearing with respect to integration with nature. And so here you have two very different thinkers on the screen. Le Corbusier was an architect who during the early 1900s coined, or rather came up with a concept of architectural spaces that were very biophobic, because he was sort of building these structures. Even though they were artistic, he was building structures that were protecting us from the elements of nature. And so that sort of architecture took off in a huge way, all the way through the 1980s. But even during the same time, early 1900s to mid 1900s, we had maverick thinkers such as Salvador Dali, who was an artist, who realized that we are moving in a direction that may not necessarily be sustainable. And so this statement by Salvador Dali has been in my mind ever since I read about it. And it continues to be a source of inspiration for me as I focus on the field of biological design. He said that architecture should be soft and hairy. And what do we mean by architecture should be soft and hairy, right? It simply means that we need to integrate biology, we need to integrate nature into our living spaces. So the idea of biophilia, integration of biology into art and design, allowed me to come up with a set of connecting studies that I thought would be great for my students, where we put these visceral needs, these creative ideas, and our understanding of biology, nature, and science into the larger framework of sustainability. How can we use our creativity and our understanding of nature to build a sustainable lifestyle? And I want to address this sort of information from biology and art. I want to address them in two different fields, which are biomimicry and biological design. They're both important for sustainability, but they both address sustainability from very different ways. So I'd like to start talking about biomimicry. And biomimicry is simply copying nature. It is the practice of looking into nature, the forms and function that are found in natural systems in order to design and find solutions to problems in a very creative and sustainable way. And biomimicry is not a new concept. Any ecologist, you can talk to both Professors Meyer and Meyer about biomimicry, and they will be able to talk about it way more in depth than I would. But even though the idea of biomimicry exists in biological studies, the concept of using biomimicry into design solutions came from Janine Benyus, who's a biological writer. She's a science writer and also a biologist and a product designer. And she came up with this concept because she found that it was sort of unnecessary to build products and architectural spaces from scratch when biological systems have been doing this for millions of years. So all we have to do is copy nature in order to use its form and function to come up with sustainable products that are very efficient. And so I'm going to talk about some of these products that have been designed for many decades and they continue to be designed. So one very famous example of a biomimetic design is the Japanese bullet train that was designed by an engineer who was in the transportation system in Japan, but he was also an avid bird watcher. And so during the time when the Japanese rail network was very popular, before this bullet train invention, what scientists and engineers found was it was creating a lot of noise pollution in cities. And so to come up with a way of reducing this noise pollution, this engineer found solutions in birds, in systems and in structures that are found in birds. So here's a picture of a kingfisher, and the beak of the kingfisher was used as an inspiration for this anterior structure of this bullet train. And what they found was because of this particular structure, the noise pollution levels reduced to decibels that could be handled by the human ear. And we also see this sort of biomimetic inspiration in medicine. The not so painless hypodermic needle was designed from the structures found in the mosquito proboscis, which is used to insert into the skin of human beings. Yes, I do understand that mosquito bites can be very painful, but it's not exactly at the time of insertion of its proboscis where it is painful. It's much later. And so scientists use these inspirations to design the not so painless hypodermic needle. We also see these sort of designs, biomimetic designs, in architectural spaces. So in Harare, Zimbabwe, there's a mall that has been designed using the structure of anthills. And this is a beautiful inspiration because this mall that you see in the image does not use air conditioning. And what the architects found was, by using these internal structures, or by mimicking these internal structures of anthills, where airflow has been copied in a way that the hot air escapes and cooler air enters the mall because of the structures, internal structures, they have found that there is a reduction in temperature by at least 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which I assume is a huge reduction in temperature, especially in a place like Zimbabwe. And so, yes, biomimicry is very efficient, as we can see. We have been able to copy nature. But I've not really discussed integrating nature into our designs. And that's where biodesign comes in. It's not copying the structures and form of nature, but it's actually using nature in our products and in our architectural spaces. So here you have an image. This is not just a prototype. This is an image of a building in Hamburg, Germany. The green areas that you see in this image are glass walls that maintain algal populations. So algae are photosynthetic organisms, and they use light to produce energy. And what this building does is it uses that energy created by photosynthetic organisms to then use heat, to use it as a form of heat to cool, to heat up the building and the water resources in the building. Apart from heating of this building, you also use the biomass of these algal systems as a way of renewable energy source. So you're really creating a setup here where you can have this self-sustaining apartment complex, which I think is extremely unique. And there have been no complaints from the residents of this building so far, from what I read. You also have other architectural spaces that are not necessarily temporary. So here's an image of a space that was built in Queens, New York. And these bricks that you see line the walls of a temporary space that was meant for an art exhibition. And those bricks are not made using cement or any other artificial product. These bricks have been made using mycelia, which are from fungal sources. And so fungi, using fungi, we're able to build these molds that then allow us to build these huge structures using those bricks from these molds. And they're extremely sustainable and renewable because we are not creating products that are polluting the environment. And then we can also go down to further products that we use on a day-to-day, in our day-to-day lives. For example, what you see on the screen here is a t-shirt that is made using synthetic, well, I shouldn't say synthetic, I should say artificial leather. And this leather is made using collagen that have been created by genetically engineered yeast cells. And so we can create these lab spaces where we are producing products that are natural. However, we are not really utilizing our land spaces, or say, for example, devoting areas to cattle that can be harmful with respect to producing greenhouse gases. And then we can go all the way into a very theoretical system where biological design and engineering concepts have been used for processes such as creating systems where patients who have respiratory issues can use the force of pets, such as these greyhounds, as they are running as respiratory systems, artificial respiratory systems. And so while biological design and biomimicry are two separate concepts, and many scientists and artists have been working on these separately, a few scientists who are also artists have found a way to combine both of these beautifully into their product design. And that's why I'd like to showcase Neri Oxman, who is an architect at MIT Media Labs. She's an architecture professor who works on material ecology. And so she has done a very great job. She has been successful in being able to combine biological design with respect to using biological products and biomimicry, which is mimicking biological form and function. And so Agua Hoya is a product that she has designed using chitin. And you may not everyone has heard of chitin before, but it's simply a product that is used by shrimps and snails, for example, as their exoskeleton. And so what Neri Oxman's lab has done is they have used these chitin sources and they have created varying concentration of chitin to create products such as to the left, you see this is a structure that is extremely strong. And so she's used a variation of chitin that has a higher concentration in this product. And she's also built these wing systems that are light and feathery. And so this is an extremely beautiful example of combining biological design and biomimicry in our worlds. And so while biomimicry gives us efficiency in systems, biological design is important to create these non-invasive systems. So how do we use these concepts at Simpson College? When I joined Simpson College and I came here for my interview, I was extremely excited by the fact that I was told I could do a May term class where it could be my topic of liking. And the first thing that came to mind is I want to combine art and science and talk about biological design and teach my students biological design. And so could we do lab work based on this biological design? Could we do studio work? Or could we have all these collaborations? And these were questions that I asked as I started teaching my students. Or rather, I should say, as I started preparing for my first May term course at the end of my first year at Simpson College. So the idea or the inspiration for this coursework came around the time when the Biomimicry Global Design Challenge was being established. So this challenge was based, it's a competition that is meant for students, both undergrad, postdoctoral scientists, grad students, so on and so forth, where they're addressing various aspects of climate change, be it air pollution, water pollution, food scarcity, so on and so forth. So using this global challenge as a platform, I wanted to create a modeling competition for my students in my May term course that was focused on biology, design, and architecture. And so I had a lot of fun teaching this course. I can't say for sure, but it looked like my students had fun too. And so I'd like to highlight some of the designs that my students came up with at the end of this class. We also had a juried art show at the end of May term where they had the opportunity to demonstrate their products, to build these models and showcase that to the Simpson community in Kent Campus Center. So I'd just like to talk a little bit about these products. We had a group that came up with sustainable tires, where they were making tires using biological material. We had another group that came up with the concept of a tree house, where they used inspiration from woodland communities to come up with an entire community. We had Tree Cycle, which was a way to use the runoffs from gardens and farmland to then recycle them to use it for the crops in those areas. We had the digester, which was a way to digest waste that are created in kitchens. And we also had the pollution polyp that was a design meant to use, to recycle and reuse and break down methane sources that are found in crop areas, in livestock areas. And so to me, this was a great experience because this was the first time that I was able to teach this course. And also I had students telling me that just their participation in these courses helped them get summer experiences in various companies. We also had one student who changed their major to biology. So that was a win-win for me as a biologist. The one thing I have to highlight here is that there were only 4 biologists amongst this group of 20 students. And so this is a very interdisciplinary course. We had students from psychology, computer science, health and exercise science, business administration, so on and so forth. And so that to me was a great experience. And so one thing that was pivotal for me from this experience was this opportunity to present at the NASA Lunch and Learn seminar. And so as a postdoctoral researcher, before I came to Simpson, I did a bit of research with these folks at the Department of Astrobiology at Kennedy Space Center, and I continue my discussion with them with respect to science and art to this day. The reason I bring this up is during some very casual conversations, when I told some of these folks that I was teaching students how to combine biology and design, they were very curious about this concept. And when the pandemic hit and people were coming up with creative ways to actually talk to the scientific community, this department came up with a lunch and learn seminar idea where they were communicating with scientists and artists all over the country. And they were asking us to then present what we were doing during a 1-hour session through Zoom. And so when they contacted me, they told me that they were interested in not just hearing my point of view, because I'm just a boring faculty member at a college. What they wanted to know was what our students were doing, given their liberal arts leaning. And therefore, I asked my undergraduate researcher and SC leader at that point, Ethan Madden, who was instrumental in helping me out with my SC honors course, and he had come up with one of the designs during the midterm course. We gave a talk at NASA with respect to biological design and discussing some of these student-based designs. What struck me was the fact that these scientists were not just curious about these products, they were coming up with ways by which we could make those products into prototypes, and they really thought that these had opportunities for research and development beyond just the classroom space. And that has been on my mind ever since. And I want to find a way by which I am able to combine the teaching of biological design with research. The second big opportunity for me came through the honors course. So when Katie Smith, who's the director of the honors program, contacted some of us faculty members with respect to coming up with interdisciplinary ideas for courses, I jumped on this opportunity because to me, the integration of art and nature is a truly interdisciplinary idea. And of course, I'm selfish in talking about this and teaching this to my students, so I had to teach one of these courses. And so I'd like to talk a bit about some of the designs that my students came up with this course. So we started all the way from animal learning. So how are learning models that are being set up in animal systems, how can they be used in our education, for example? And we have other ideas where we had ginkgo and blue-green algae that were used to create fuel for motor systems. We had one of the most popular areas of interest in this honors course, which, by the way, was part of the foundations, the Simpson colloquium. So these are all first-year students coming up with these ideas, and not all of them are biologists. So to me, this was a great success. Initially, when these students were trying to connect these concepts, you could see their frustrations. But but there was a breaking point where they were able to combine these different worlds. And so I am really proud of these products that they came up with. They're theoretical at this point, but at some point, I want us to move in a direction where these real life products. So for example, we had a product that was designed to filter microplastics from oceans. We had another great product called Plastic Munching that again was made by students who are here at Simpson College with their drive to come up with cleaning up ocean places. And so this gave me more of a momentum to then recruit students to actually participate in this biomimicry design challenge, which was my original inspiration for these courses. So this year, two of our students, Katie Pantzer, who is a biochemistry major and also an honors and also a history major, and Ethan Madden, who is a biology major, were extremely excited in participating in this challenge, where they came up with this idea called Clathrin Vane to filter microplastics from oceans. And they were inspired by form and functions in biology, such as the heart valves and systems. And their participation was appreciated by the judges. They got great feedback from the judges. The one thing that the judges asked was, is there a prototype? Have you developed the system in the lab? And so that again gave me a lot of ideas, and it continues to give me inspiration in terms of combining these lecture-based courses into my research. I also like to thank the Simpson Interdisciplinary Research Grant that gave us the money to participate in this challenge. And I want to continue to work with both the honors the honors program and the Simpson undergraduate research program to build this system where we have where the students have accessibility to these design challenges. So moving forward, what can we do with all of these tools and resources we have at Simpson College, given its liberal arts leaning? This is a truly liberal arts education dream. Biological design is not just meant for biologists. It seeks its inspiration from biology, but to create these products, we need the division of arts, not just fine arts, but visual and performing arts and design. We need inspiration and input from the humanities, from the social sciences, from the other areas of natural sciences. So technology, politics, culture, natural sciences, all of these are coming into play when these products have been designed, because most of these modeling competitions not just seek a product, they want to know how you can utilize this product in our day-to-day lives. How does it impact a person in Iowa versus a person in Burkina Faso versus a person in Bombay, India? And so how can we use these opportunities and make education at Simpson more accessible using these tools? To me, the gears of biological design, experiential learning, undergraduate research opportunities, honors program, recruitment and retention are not separate ideas. And it's not just to me. I think most faculty members look into ideas of integration and collaboration, but they are gears that work really well together to create this well-oiled system. And I would like to end my talk with respect to sort of a push towards inspiring our faculty and students to think in terms of this sort of an integration. So for example, we are working a lot, admissions is working a lot, the college is working a lot towards recruitment of ideas that are accessible to our students and to bring in students through fields such as athletics, speech and debate, and so on and so forth. But alongside some of these programs that give joy, we also need to pay attention to other programs such as the undergraduate research setup and honors via these modeling competition that allow retention of students. Research has been done in terms of how these sort of competitions make science, art, design, education accessible across campus and allow in retention of these students. And these are tools and concepts and ideas that students take with them beyond Simpson. And so we end up creating a network of alumni that want to give back to Simpson, not just because of the fun time that they've had at Simpson, but also we are giving them the tools to build their lives. And so I'd like to thank everyone, and I want us all to think about how we can grow the future, not just through biological design, but how we help our students at Simpson College to grow their future by having access across campus to all these resources because of the opportunity that we give them. So thank you. Thank you for patiently listening to my talk. And I'd like to take questions.
Well, thank you so much, Aswati. Really interesting and really a new concept to me and probably some others that we're viewing today as well. If there are any questions, feel free to submit those through the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. I will start with a question for you, and that's since this was a new concept to me, I feel like now when I go out into the world, I will probably say, oh, look at that. That looks like it mimics this. Do you find yourself doing that often or seeing those things that you go, I know what that's designed after?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I now have faculty members who are just sending me these articles after I've been teaching this course. So I had Lindsay Ditzler who sent me an article recently about chameleons and how their pads are used, were used as an inspiration for these sticky tabs. I don't know what word to call, how to refer to them, but how these are used in creating products that have great suction, for example. So yes, and now when I look at prairie grass, all I think about is my model organism that looks like these hair-like structures. So yes, I'm constantly in that mode.
And I don't know if you know this or not, but with current architectural education, are they bringing biomimicry and biodesign into that more in the actual teaching of it, or is it still teaching solely on physics and those types?
No, that's a great question. And from what research I've done with respect to articles that are being published, these are actually biomimetic design has been established as part of coursework design, not just in architecture, but also in biological programs. Yes, that's a great question.
Well, it doesn't appear like there are any other questions at this time. So with that, thank you all for attending today, and a special thank you, Aswati, for
Thank you.
being our presenter today. We greatly appreciate it.